After 70, you don't have to explain your whole past to anyone. People may ask questions out of curiosity, but not every detail of your life needs to be shared. Some things are personal, and keeping them private protects your peace. In this video, we'll talk about 5 parts of your past that are better kept to yourself. Not because you're hiding anything, but because sharing them can bring stress, judgment, or misunderstandings. At this age, your comfort matters more than satisfying someone else's curiosity. Before we start, tell me, which state are you watching from? 1. Past financial mistakes or losses. One thing many seniors carry quietly is the memory of financial mistakes from earlier years. Maybe it was a decision that didn't work out, money lent to someone who never returned it, or a job choice that affected savings. These things stay in the mind because money decisions always feel heavier when we look back. But after 70, you don't need to explain these past choices to anyone, not even your children. Younger people often don't understand the conditions, pressures, and responsibilities you had back then. They only see the result, not the situation. Sharing these old details can sometimes lead to blame or judgment, even if that's not their intention. They may say things like, "Why didn't you do this instead?" or "You should have saved more." But they didn't live your life, they didn't stand in your shoes, and they didn't face the same challenges. Every decision you made was based on what you knew at that time, with the responsibilities you had. I've seen this happen in real life. A friend's mother, now 76, once shared with her son that many years ago she invested in a small business with a family member. The business failed, and she lost all the money she had saved. She only shared it casually during a conversation, but after that day, her son kept bringing it up, sometimes joking, sometimes questioning her choices, sometimes hinting that she should have been smarter. It bothered her deeply, even though she had already accepted that loss decades ago. She told me later, "I wish I never said anything. It only opened old wounds." This is why keeping certain financial memories private protects your peace. Not everyone understands the emotional weight of the decisions you made. And honestly, there is no benefit in reopening those chapters. Your past money choices do not define your worth today. You survived, you managed, you raised your family, and you did the best you could with the resources and knowledge you had. At this age, you don't owe explanations. What matters is the life you built, not the mistakes that happened. 2. Old personal relationships from early life. As we age, people sometimes get curious about our past, especially about old friendships, early relationships, or emotional connections we had long before we got married or settled down. But after 70, you don't have to explain any of that. Your early life relationships belong to a time when you were still growing, learning, and figuring out who you were. Those memories are personal, and sharing them today can create confusion that serves no purpose. Younger family members often see things in black and white. They don't understand that relationships decades ago were not the same as today. There was no social media, no texting, and no modern lifestyle. Life was slower, emotions were quieter, and people handled relationships differently. If you share old stories now, they may misinterpret your feelings or think you are comparing your past to your present. That can create misunderstandings that you never intended. Some seniors also worry that talking about old relationships might hurt someone's feelings, especially a spouse or a family member who takes things to heart. Even if the relationship was innocent or long forgotten, people sometimes react emotionally without thinking. At this stage of life, you don't need unnecessary tension. I've seen this happen with someone I know. A neighbor of mine, now 82, once mentioned to her granddaughter that she had a close friend in her 20s, someone she almost married before life took a different path. She shared it casually, thinking it was just a harmless old memory. But her granddaughter later repeated the story to the family, and suddenly people started asking questions. Her husband, who was usually calm, became quiet for days. No one meant harm, but the story created an uncomfortable atmosphere in the house. She told me later, "That was nearly 60 years ago. I don't know why I even said it." This is why some past relationships are better kept in your heart. They were part of your journey, but they don't need to be part of everyone else's conversations. Protecting your peace is more important than satisfying someone's curiosity. 3. Family conflicts that happened long ago. Every family has moments from the past that were difficult. Arguments, misunderstandings, tensions, or situations where people hurt each other without meaning to. These old conflicts may still sit in your memory, but after 70, you don't need to bring them back or explain them to the younger generation. Many of those situations belonged to a different time, with different circumstances, and involving people who may not even be around anymore. Sharing old disputes can easily create confusion for younger family members who never lived through those moments. They might judge someone unfairly, take sides, or form opinions based on a story they don't fully understand. What was once a small disagreement in your family history can suddenly turn into new tension between people who were never part of the original problem. At this stage of life, creating peace is more important than reviving something that no longer matters. There's also the emotional weight attached to those memories. Talking about them can bring feelings you thought you had already let go: frustration, sadness, or disappointment. Keeping certain parts of the past quiet protects your heart. Not every battle needs to be retold, and not every wound needs to be reopened, especially when it took years to heal. Someone I know, an older gentleman from Ohio, once shared that he had a major disagreement with his brother more than 40 years ago. It happened over a property issue, and it caused them to stop talking for many years. The matter eventually settled, and both moved on with life. Recently, during a family dinner, he mentioned the incident to his grandchildren, thinking it was just a small story from his past. But they began asking questions, gossip started spreading through the family, and old bitterness resurfaced. His children even confronted their uncle, restarting a conflict that had been quiet for decades. He later said, "I should have kept that part of my life where it belonged, in the past." This is why old family conflicts are better left untouched. You gained your peace through years of patience. There is no benefit in letting history disturb the calm you worked so hard to find. 4. Personal failures that no longer matter. As we get older, we start to see our past more clearly, both the good moments and the mistakes we made along the way. But one thing becomes very important after 70. You don't need to share every personal failure with others. The things that once felt like big mistakes often lose their meaning with time. Life moved forward, you adjusted, and the world kept turning. There is no reason to reopen chapters that you already learned from. Younger people sometimes think in very practical terms. They look at past failures with today's mindset, forgetting that times were different, opportunities were limited, and responsibilities were heavier back then. If you share certain old choices, like a job you left too early, a business idea that didn't work out, or an opportunity you couldn't take, they may start giving opinions or advice that you never asked for. It can make you feel judged for something you have already forgiven yourself for. Talking about old failures can also make younger family members see you differently, even if they don't say it directly. They might think you could have done better, or they may worry unnecessarily about decisions you made decades ago. These thoughts don't help anyone, not them, and certainly not you. I once knew a woman from Texas who shared with her daughter that she wished she had continued her education when she was younger. She didn't call it a failure, just a quiet regret. But after hearing it, her daughter kept reminding her of how different life could have been. She kept asking questions, making suggestions, and bringing it up again and again. What was simply a small reflection for the mother turned into an uncomfortable topic every time they talked. She later said, "I only mentioned it once, and I regretted it. I had accepted my life long ago." This is why keeping certain personal setbacks private is not hiding, it's protecting your peace. You lived through those moments, you learned what you needed to learn, and you moved forward. That is enough. Your past does not need fresh explanations, and your self-worth should never be measured by mistakes that no longer matter. 5. Deep emotional pain you survived alone. Across a long life, everyone goes through moments that leave a quiet ache inside. Loss, disappointment, betrayal, or experiences that were simply too heavy to talk about at the time. Many seniors carried these burdens silently because life demanded strength, not discussion. And after 70, you don't need to explain these parts of your past to anyone. These experiences shaped you, but they don't need to be reopened. Younger generations often see emotions differently. They ask direct questions, they want detailed explanations, and they try to fix things, even when nothing needs fixing. But emotional pain from decades ago doesn't fit into simple answers. They might worry too much, misunderstand the situation, or feel responsible for comforting you. None of that brings relief. It only creates unnecessary stress for you and them. Talking about old emotional wounds can also stir feelings you already settled. Maybe you worked hard to move forward from something. Maybe you accepted life the way it unfolded. When you reopen those memories now, they can feel heavier than before, simply because you've lived so many years with calm and maturity. Your peace is worth protecting. I know a senior gentleman from California who shared something similar. In his 20s, he lost his closest friend after a sudden argument that was never resolved. It hurt him deeply at the time, but he learned to move on, built a family, and lived a full life. Recently, during a casual family conversation, his grandson asked about his childhood friends. He mentioned this old incident, thinking it was just a simple memory. But his grandson kept asking why it happened, what went wrong, and whether he ever tried to fix it. The grandfather later said, "I had made peace with it long ago, but talking about it brought back feelings I didn't need anymore." It reminded him why some emotions are better left where they are, quiet and settled. Keeping certain emotional pains private is not avoidance, it is wisdom. You survived those moments with strength, and you don't need to relive them for anyone's curiosity. At this stage of life, your heart deserves gentleness. Some stories are meant to stay inside, where they no longer hurt. As we grow older, we learn that not everything from our past needs to be shared. Some memories teach us lessons, some shape who we are, and some simply belong to a time that has already passed. After 70, your peace matters more than explaining old mistakes, old relationships, or old struggles. You've lived long enough to know what should stay in your heart and what doesn't need to be discussed again. Keeping certain parts of your past private is not hiding anything. It is choosing calm over stress and choosing comfort over confusion. Your past made you stronger, wiser, and more understanding, but it doesn't need to be opened for others to analyze or question. This stage of life deserves softness, respect, and quiet happiness. Thank you for spending your time with me today. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe our channel for more valuable senior-friendly content. It means a lot.